From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They called me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal, Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. If you are tuning in to our strange news program, The Evening It Publishes, welcome, friends and neighbors, to May 12th, 2025. There's a lot of stuff going on. Shout out to everybody's brand new AI-fueled boyfriend or girlfriend or what have you. Did you guys hear about this?
No.
I saw Mark Zuckerberg awkwardly defending it. That was about the span of it for me.
It's weird because maybe the four of us are functioning in a bit of a editorial or experiential bubble, because I personally was not, I knew this was a trend, but I was not aware about how concerned parts of society have become about this. We won't spend too much time on it, but if you go to an excellent Rolling Stone article by Miles Klee, which was published May 4th, just a few days before we record on May 7th right now, you'll see this in-depth examination of a problem people are having. This is the headline. People are losing loved ones to AI-fueled spiritual fantasies. It reminds me a little bit of the technical luminary or the tech luminary who left Google under bad terms because he believed that they had created sentient AI and that he was in conversations with it. Do you guys remember that story?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I can't remember where we all as a group landed on whether or not, or I think we got back to the old bag of badgers. How does one define sentience in the first place?
It's hard to even define as a human, what it even means within our species. Results vary, let's just say.
Your mileage may vary. Well put. The quick skinny is this. Multiple people over the past few years, perhaps exacerbated by the COVID lockdown, feel that they have lost their significant others or lost some level of emotional or even physical intimacy as their partner increasingly pays more attention to an AI bot, a large language model that continually sort of big ups them and is sycophantic and tells them what they want to hear.
A la QAnon. Just saying. Similar.
Right. Custom-made conspiracy.
Yeah. No, I mean, it just in terms of like people being lonely and isolated and seeking something that they are lacking. And sometimes there being situations that exploit that. And yeah, it's inevitable that we're going to have these AI companions, but boy, oh boy, there's certain folks that might go down a real dark rabbit hole. Have you seen the movie Her? I actually haven't, and I have been saving it.
It's worth it.
I know everyone loves it, and I love the filmmaker, obviously, Spike Jonze, but I haven't seen that one. I've been saving it, and I think that's maybe it's a little less dystopian, but I feel like it does get around to some stuff about isolation and how this isn't a real relationship. But maybe I'm wrong, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're on the money there, Noel. It's no Police Academy 4, but it deals with a lot of the same things.
Spit.
So we'll give one line here. This article introduces the concept of something called ChatGPT-induced psychosis. The idea is that especially people who are in a vulnerable emotional state, there's a reason yes men are such a common trope, that they can be put in a really bad psychological place by a large language model that essentially worships them.
Yeah.
And talks to them as their Messiah.
Well, look, I don't want to cast aspersions at Miles Klee and the folks over at Rolling Stone, but a lot of the source material that they've got in this article comes directly from Reddit threads. So just some random Reddit commenter telling a big long tale about how their husband is being seduced by ChatGPT. I only worry that maybe the person writing on Reddit is exaggerating a little bit or telling a story or
because it's anecdotal.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to prove any of this stuff.
That being said, though, I mean, anecdotal stuff in a properly researched piece or study is obviously valuable, but without any kind of barrier to entry for this kind of stuff in terms of its validity, it is hard to take at full face value, right?
Right. Or a measured quantitative study over time, right? That's what we would ideally need. And I think that's an important point. Also, Matt, for a hot second there, I thought you were going to say, because these are anecdotal posts on Reddit informing a significant piece of this article, were those posts written by ChatGPT itself? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
So, how would you know?
Bias there. Yeah.
Well, it's just crazy. Anybody could make up anything at any time, right? And if you can't confirm who said what, when, and then follow all of those lines down to what actually happened, then it didn't happen.
The so-called post-truth environment.
Boy, oh boy.
The age of information. That's the thing. Yeah, we call it the age of information, but that's kind of like, again, the pursuit of happiness. No one has called it the age of correct information, and they haven't done that for some very good reasons. So be safe. Always treat things with a grain of salt until the science is established. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. If you are in love with what people would call an AI bot, we want to hear your anecdotes as well. We're going to get to so much stuff here. Nbiriu's back in the conversation. Whoop whoop. And we're gonna talk about some rare earth stuff leading to all too common chaos. There's a musical we're excited to explore together with you. We're going to burn some trees, and I am using that in the hip hop sense. And we might journey to an underground city, but we'll definitely talk about money. Before we do any of that, maybe we pause for a word from our sponsors. And as a bunch of lovers of musicals, dip our toes into one of the hottest tickets in San Francisco.
And we've returned, and we're about to burn some trees till our eyes get holier than Swiss cheese. I didn't make that up, that is the Anti-Pop Consortium, but I think it's an apt turn of phrase here, talking about a story out of Türkiye. How do you say it, Ben? Is that
Türkiye.
Right? Türkiye, there you go. Specifically, the Lice district of Diyarbakir, where security forces apparently burned 20.7 tons of marijuana, cannabis, in an open field as part of the disposal stage of its anti-drug operations. Problem there is that the massive burn, which was done all at once, created a intoxicating plume of smoke that drifted over to the nearby town of Lice, which is, of course, inhabited by 25,000 people, leaving many, according to reports, feeling high AF for days, it would seem. There have been many critics talking about how this is a pretty boneheaded way of going about this, to do it all at once in such close proximity to the town. And a lot of to your point in the beginning, Ben, there are some really great comments on this on Reddit that I'm going to read for a little color because I think they're fantastic. But I also have found that most of the articles I came across about this story were kind of on like oddity type websites, and then also sort of translated Turkish media. So I just want to make that clear and make sure all of this is taken with a grain of salt. But here are kind of the facts as we have it. On April 18th, when officials burned this 20 tons or 766 kilograms, 679 grams of seized cannabis, worth roughly 10 billion Turkish lira, or around 261 million US dollars. This was stuff that they'd confiscated over the span of a year. Around the area from 2023 to 2024. And yes, this plume of smoke did drift. Reports from locals, this was just described as a local man coming from a report on townflex.com. The smell of drugs has been enveloping the district for days. We cannot open our windows. Our children got sick. We are constantly going to the hospital. 5 days, this was reported by families keeping their windows shut and remaining indoors. indoors because of the THC saturated air. A real a smog alert, we might call it around here. Remember, was it you, Matt, that was talking about the orange smog alert, and your kid thought it was a monster called an orange smoggler? Was that you?
Nope. But that sounds fun.
Man, somebody told that story, and it sounded like something you would have said, but maybe not. Anyway, that'll always stick with me. So in my mind, it's credited to you. But the thing that is insane to me and that I do think requires looking at with a little bit of a grain of salt, when I popped up this article, and I'm seeing it in a couple places, I see this thing that I swore was AI generated. It is these like burning bales of whatever, flammable material taken from an aerial shot in a field in the shape of the name of the town. LICE, lice. Yahya Oger, who's the chairman of the Yesil Yildiz Association, was not into it. He had this to say: "This was perhaps done as a preventative measure to deter, but the fact that it was destroyed in the city center could cause serious discomfort to people due to the smoke of burned hemp," he said. As you know, the destruction or burning of such herbs can also cause serious intoxication. Just as tobacco harms passive smokers when used in a closed area, the smoke released by such narcotic substances, when disposed of, can cause serious discomfort. It can make people drunk, dizzy, nauseated, and cause hallucinations. So that's, and then I'm seeing a side shot of the fire that does look like the same environment that is pictured from above with the name of the town spelled out. So
I'm interested in this a lot, Noel.
I know, dude.
I found one that looks like an official news source out of the country, and all it's saying is that they burned 20 tons of the drugs. It doesn't say anything about anyone getting high, and it feels like something that an Onion-style article would write, right?
I did want to mention that. I know that the numbers are correct. I've seen them repeated identically in multiple sources, and I appreciate you finding that one, Matt. I am with you, especially the spelled out thing. I mean, but it's also just such a niche story from like a part of the country that doesn't make the news for this kind of thing a ton, But I swear, looking at this lice thing, it really has the smack of AI generated image. But I don't know. What do you think, Ben?
There's also, inevitably a bit of propaganda here on the part of the authorities. This has happened in the United States on a smaller level. I remember a while back, a decade or so, something similar happened in Indonesia. So as we're talking about this off air, as strange as it may seem to have the confiscated substances literally spell out the name of the town, is it that different from the photo ops that police and law enforcement take pictures of when they say, like we captured, we captured 8 tons of cocaine. Here's the picture of the 7 tons of cocaine that we confiscated.
And they call it drugs on the table, actually, I think is a term that you see in cop shows a lot, where that's a big deal to make sure you get drugs on the table so that you can make a big show of it. So that's a really good point, Ben.
I mean, that may be, that almost certainly, seems to be the case here. And also, I love your point about, it may sound silly to people who are routine cannabis users to imagine folks having crazy effects, from this exposure. But we have to remember, not everybody in this town is a regular cannabis imbiber. They didn't consent to this exposure.
I can imagine that many of them, older folks particularly, maybe had never touched the stuff in their life by choice. Perhaps it's a personal standard, and that's really messed up. Everything's wrong about that, no question. But reports of hallucinations and all of that, it does sort of make you chuckle a little bit if you're, a weed smoker. That being said, though, I certainly have eaten a strong enough edible that can actually make you hallucinate a little bit if you're not careful. And this was so dense and for such a long time, I could imagine this could have some health effects.
In such a large amount, too. You know what I mean? It also would be interesting. This is overthinking, but it would be interesting to see rates of air conditioning in buildings,
Ooh, probably
in apartments.
low. I bet you low. I just have a feeling.
You know what I mean?
So I do know what you mean.
That could play a factor there. And I want to give a shout out to Dylan, to your orange smog conversation. Dylan points out that he always thought, presumably as a child, Dylan, that the ocean undertow was a monster in the sea named the undertoad.
Yeah, amazing. It's exactly the same kind of thinking. Magical thinking. Oh, children. Yeah.
We get confused. Lastly, for me, man,
sure.
When you read the title of one of those things or mentioned high AF, I recently read something that has shifted my perspective on abbreviations for the better. Met someone who said for years they thought AF didn't mean as beep, but they thought it meant as foretold. So,
okay.
So please do us a favor, folks, when you're reading stuff on the internet or in text messages and someone uses the abbreviation AF, just imagine how much cooler it is if AF in your head stands for as foretold. This taco is good as foretold.
You know what? I learned a new one recently from the kid and their friends. TS. TS is bussin'. TS is great. This you could say that about a taco. TS is the best taco I ever had. As foretold, similar. Yeah, no, it actually fills a similar role. I just want to read a couple of the comments on this Reddit thread because some of them are really, really great. Let's see. Surefire Diddy says, did they not know what happens when you light weed on fire? Here's one with a little more insight into it from a different perspective, to your point, Ben. Or no, Matt, but whomever. Like the idea of this being a propagandistic thing and also being reported here in the States plenty. When I was a little kid, my grandparents lived in central West Virginia. As the story goes, someone did a little gorilla grow in an unused field on the side of a hill. It was at some point abandoned, so everything went to seed, but it was still like 2+ acres of cannabis on the side of a mountain. So local law enforcement decided to chop it all down with a thresher or whatever, put it into a big pile in the middle of the field and burn it. So, of course, what happened is that while a lot of seeds were destroyed, a great number of them were lifted up into the air and spread all over the county. My grandfather's place was a mile or two away from this, and you would see the occasional weed plant sprouting on the edges of his fields, and you would see them growing on the side of the road. One of my favorites here is a little exchange between Rexiditrex and Pizza is Life. Says, I had a family member who worked for customs, and he would tell us about these burning events and how guys would get high. To which Pizza is Life responded, strange that they only burn about 1 gram at a time in a series of fires. AKA, smoking weed. That's it for this one, y'all. Unless you had anything to add. Thanks for pulling those extra sources, Matt.
Heck yeah, dude. I'm still looking at it. It says they use 200 liters of diesel fuel.
That's, also crazy. Also insane.
Well, yeah. So, but if you use that much fuel to burn that much...
Wouldn't it just incinerate?
Well, and what does burning that fuel do to the smoke that's coming off of the fire?
It would make it worse. Yeah. That's probably where the real health concerns pop in, is this idea of these toxic chemicals being mixed in. So not only are you getting high from the cannabis, you're basically like huffing toxic fumes.
Yeah, and tires were involved as well. So it reminds me of the burn pits that we discussed in Iraq and Afghanistan from military personnel.
Well, real quickly, y'all, I'm just going to move on to this other story. I think this is fun. Apparently, Luigi Mangione, new folk hero on trial for his life. I believe the state is seeking the death penalty in his case of killing or assassinating the healthcare executive in the streets of Manhattan. Is the subject now of a satirical musical that is debuting at a small theater in San Francisco and is already making some waves. It is already sold out. And let's see, Fox KTVU has you guys got to check this out. Hold on, let me just see if I can. How do I drop an image? Or maybe can you guys look at the KTVU link, the image of the courtroom scene?
Oh, that's an SNL snapshot.
Oh, that's an SNL sketch. Okay, my mistake. I haven't seen this one. Okay, so I thought this was from the musical, but it's very funny. And I can see this being rife for satire, as has already been the case with SNL, because it represents something big, something, larger beyond just this single event. There's like a cultural shift involved in how people view the healthcare system and healthcare executives in such a way that a person who literally did a murder is being held up in this reverential way, which is very interesting. So the creators of the musical, let's see. I'll just read from the Toronto Star here first. Luigi Mangione, the suspected healthcare CEO assassin turned folk hero, is the subject of a new musical. Is that depraved or potentially brilliant? Okay, this is actually an op-ed. Musicals are more than just singing cats and dancing candlesticks, writes Joshua Chong, and a show like Luigi the Musical is not unprecedented. Half a year ago, Luigi Mangione was a nobody. Then on December 9th, 2024, the 26-year-old Ivy League grad was thrust into the spotlight when he was arrested at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, suspected of murdering United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson days earlier in New York City. Luigi the Musical is being described by its creators as campy, surreal, and funny, yet emotionally honest. It imagines Mangione sharing a prison cell with the now convicted tech entrepreneur Sam Bankman-Fried, along with Sean Diddy Combs, two people who were in fact housed in the same facility that Luigi was in when he was first arrested. Or maybe it was long-term. I can't remember if he got moved. The American rapper accused of sex trafficking. It's all predicated on the fact that in real life, all three men happen to be incarcerated at the same facility. Here is a quick statement from the creators. Luigi the Musical is a comedy that imagines the surreal scenario of Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, sharing a prison cell with real-life inmates, blah, blah, blah. Just said what I said. Same stuff. While the setup is absurd, it's also rooted in a strange truth. These three men were indeed incarcerated at the same facility. That unlikely fact sparked our team's creative exploration. The show is not a celebration of violence of any kind, nor is it an attempt to pass judgment on an ongoing legal matter. Our hearts go out to the family of Brian Thompson, and we acknowledge the pain and complexity surrounding this case. Instead, Luigi the Musical uses satire to ask deeper cultural questions. Why did the case strike such a chord with so many people? Why did a figure like Luigi become a kind of folk hero in certain corners of the internet? What does that say about how we see institutions in America today? I'm on board. If I were in San Francisco, I would love to see this. I hope it does well. It's interesting. What do you guys think? Is it in poor taste, or does it have its heart in the right place?
Well, it's three very interesting individuals.
Yeah.
Simply because of where they kind of fit inside
the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, what America is. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's complexity there. And if you got smart people making this thing, then I'm certainly interested.
Yeah, I think the statement was very thoughtful and indicates that they are. I don't know. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, fully agree. I'm of the mind that one can explore anything through art as long as it is carried out, thoughtfully and with truth at the core of it. The thing about good satire, as we've mentioned previously on this show and other appearances, is that great satire comes from a place of affection, right? That's the reason some SNL works better than other sketches. But with this in mind, I would be extremely hesitant to make any opinion of it until I was able to actually see the play, or at least read the script. And again, I'm a sucker for a musical, man. Like if you can take the most boring concept possible, like the history of beige paint, and you hit me with a couple of songs and a 3-act structure, then
beige,
I'm
the
freaking
musical?
in.
I'm so on board, brother.
I'm on board. You know what I mean? I don't even need to know who's in the cast. Just, keep it going with the music.
Paint drying, the musical. It can be done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the Book of Mormon is the perfect example of that kind of thing, where it's like, take a concept that is very complex, sounds boring a little bit on the surface, and then you can write some songs, as you said, Ben. Boom.
There's a musical entirely about corn, and there's CORN, which is a bit of a missed opportunity, but you can see selections from that musical at their Tiny Desk concert.
Didn't know about that.
Well, I'd say watch the Tiny Desk before you pony up for the increasingly expensive tickets.
It's true. I know. I just want to end with just saying that, like, I have gained my love of musicals over the past handful of years. And most times I get to go to New York, I try to catch something. And I've seen some really wonderful stuff lately. And I'm all in. So this is right up my street. I just want to end with this last part of the statement, which I think sums everything we've said up nicely. We do not condone violence from the creators, sexual assault or pedophilia in any form. This musical, in fact, serves as a critique of these men and the institutions that enabled them. Our characters reflect three institutions of modern disillusionment: healthcare, tech, and Hollywood. Each represents a pillar of American life where public trust has eroded and where people increasingly feel betrayed, exploited, or abandoned. By placing these forces in one absurd prison cell, we're offering a mirror to our moment. Campy, surreal, and funny, but also emotionally honest. Right in line with what you were saying, Matt. The zeitgeist of it all. I'm on board. Luigi the Musical, sign me up. Let's take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsor, and then we'll come back with more strange news.
And we've returned. Guys, we are jumping to a concept that we have hammered home so many times on this show. War. What is it good for? Controlling the land above natural resource deposits. Okay.
Wow, that doesn't quite have the same ring to it, Matt, but I appreciate the effort.
No? Okay.
No, it's great, dude. Are you kidding? I'm giving you a hard time.
We talked about it a lot. When you go to war, in ancient times, when you go to war, you control territory, right? You control borderlands and areas that are easier or harder to cross to get into your territory. And especially as industrialization began, you control territory because there's stuff in the ground underneath the borders.
Right.
That's it. Full stop. And the reason why big countries go to war to control stuff, if it's not part of some bigger ideological thing, it's probably because there's good stuff in them lands and you got to get it out. Well, we got some news for you. Comes to us from Andrew Roth at The Guardian on May 1st. U.S. and Ukraine sign minerals deal that solidifies investment in Kiev's defense against Russia. So what does that mean?
This was the thing that was the big kerfuffle in that really bad meeting at the White House.
Well, a series of bad meetings.
But the public one, where like basically, they shamed him very. What's his name? Sorry, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky. It was, more or less humiliated on public television, and it was about that.
That was part of it. That was part of the art of the deal, if you will.
if you say so.
Publicly humiliate guy into making him capitulate to the ridiculous rules that are set out in the deal that you initially slide across the table. Mm-hmm. That they did not capitulate to that.
Yeah.
What came out of all of that stuff post-Vatican, trip for both Trump and the leader of Ukraine and, hanging out at the funeral of the Pope and all of the other stuff, there is now a new deal that is officially signed by all parties. And here's why it's important. Ukraine holds around 5% of the world's mineral resources and rare earth metals, but many of those deposits have yet to be explored. So actually sending teams out there to drill down a little bit to figure out exactly how much of said resource is in that place, due to the scans that are done by these large private companies to figure out where actual minerals are. A ton of those resources haven't even been started, right? If you imagine a big mining operation or something like that, they're just sitting out there in the land. So this deal, this huge deal that has been signed between the United States and Ukraine to, quote, share profits and royalties from the, quote, future sale of Ukrainian minerals and rare earths is a big deal. It means that the U.S. is going to start to get its money back that it has been spending on, what do we say, bolstering the defense that Ukraine has against the invasion of Russia.
Sure.
To the tune of $175 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And
sticker shock. Oof.
Yeah. And allegedly, this money is going to be repaid basically on a 50-50 basis. So for every dollar, let's say, of resources that's extracted, the United States gets 50 cents of that, and then Ukraine gets 50 cents of that. They also say that the United States and Ukraine are going to share 50-50 responsibility for this new fund that is being created. It's called the U.S.-Ukraine Reconstruction Investment Fund, which sounds lovely. And this is just this weird thing, you guys, of the United States providing support, or any country providing support for another country, right? And then eventually somebody comes along and says, hey, we're going to need you to pay a little bit of that back. Actually all of it, maybe with some interest. We did help you out in a time of need. So how about them resources?
Let's get at them. Let me at them.
I mean, it is, because a country that is at war can't just sit there and pay a bunch of money back to somebody who's helping them out. But what they can do is sign agreements for future repayment, something the United States did.
Lend-lease, for instance.
Mm-hmm. It's something that every country has. Well, not every country that's been at war has done, but many countries who find themselves in that state of active war have done that, requested aid, and then signed something for future repayment of help.
Signing away your future, essentially, as a country.
In some ways. In other ways, it may not be a hard resource, but it could be something like membership in a regional group. It could also be things like other economic concessions, like we will allow insert corporation here to act in the following way. And, that's a snake that can bite you back, because sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes those companies end up functioning like state powers within those countries that had to open their door.
Does it not seem like, since this went down, that Trump softened his position a little bit on, the selective truth of Ukraine started the war, and he seems a little less outwardly pro-Putin, like, now that he's gotten what he wanted? Does it maybe seem like maybe a lot of that rhetoric was just a bargaining tactic, or like a way of applying pressure? Like, did he present them a bill? I'm just that's all. I'm gonna leave it on the table.
Yeah, going back to my other linguistic note, which I think is apropos here. The art of the deal never promises the art of the good deal. It's just like, here's the wackadoo stuff I say here. We've talked about the strategy before. It's not unique. To your point, Noel, I think it is objective for us to acknowledge that this quid pro quo kind of stuff occurs, as Matt was saying, throughout history. It's not always maybe this blatant or this public, and there are a ton of factors following into that. The idea of softening the stance could come from any number of other intervening variables, but I am fairly certain this plays some sort of role. I think there's more under the surface here, but this plays some sort of role, and we can see this even in little like light work stuff. The map that from the Guardian article you shared there, Matt, will notice if you scroll down, there's a bevy of different precious minerals, rare earth, and then just cool stuff that it's nice for a country to have. And some of the stuff that is mapped out and maybe part of this deal is technically controlled by Russia right now.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And this investment would provide an economic incentive for the U.S. to continue investment in Ukraine's defense and reconstruction. And the thought there, I believe, that maybe wouldn't be stated outwardly, is that hopefully we get control of all of those resources and not just the ones that Ukraine currently controls.
Right. And then the idea also it's inescapable. We have to mention the badger in the bag here as tensions rise with China, which has vast control over a lot of very important minerals that are key to every industry, right? As China and the U.S. have these tensions rising, the U.S. desperately needs to find alternative sourcing for stuff that will continue to keep the war machine rolling.
Yup. And as Ukraine's first deputy prime minister, Sviridenko, said, it is, quote, the Ukrainian state that determines where and what to extract at all times. So Ukraine's feeling good about the partnership. The U.S. is feeling good, great probably about the partnership. And we'll see where this goes. But guys, we got to move forward to Kentucky. Something very, very important has happened in Florida to a Kentucky man. Okay. A gentleman at the cool age of 50, Mr. James Farthing, won the dang Powerball, you guys.
Whoa.
Holy crap. Nice.
Holy cow.
It was at an estimated $167 million. Bam.
That's insane.
That's lovely. Come on. You won the lottery. Let's go. But as we've talked about, the lottery is a fickle thing.
Strings, right?
The lottery is a strange thing. Your luck is tremendous in one moment. What happens if it pivots back the other way so rapidly that your neck breaks? Well, on Monday, April 28th, Mr. James Farthing went and collected the money, or he signed the paperwork to collect all of the money. And he began his journey as a now 160, well, let's say 100 millionaire, almost, maybe, around that much, after you take out all the taxes and everything. Then on Wednesday, April 30th, this poor man was arrested on charges of battery of a law enforcement officer, battery and resisting an officer without violence. Isn't that interesting? Without violence, but he also battered an officer, but he did it without violence somehow. Just the thought that
verbal abuse, perhaps? What are we talking
Well, no, he got into a fight with somebody at this place called Island Grand at Tradewinds in St. Pete Beach, Florida. And then as he was in this fight, several people came to try and break it up. Some of them were from the Pinellas County Police Department, or I guess, yeah, they were deputies, so maybe it was the Sheriff's Department. But he ended up kicking one of them in the face as he was just having this little altercation with another person. He tried to flee, but he got booked into jail right after winning $167 million. Damn.
Oof.
Just to say luck can change, right? What is luck? Is there luck? Who knows? And we're just talking about all of this stuff because it does feel as though you can be extremely lucky in one moment and feel at the top of the world and everything can come crashing down because of one small decision and, one small set of circumstances. Everything crashes down. It is possible, right? To our next story from The Independent. I'm not going to read the title here because I feel like every time you use the word Trump in a title of something, and you, instead of saying the president or President Trump or something like that, it puts in your head a negative image of whatever's coming next because it is the term Trump is thrown around as a pejorative itself, right? In a weird way.
Well, supporters also, I mean, I would say it's divisive language, right?
Well, yeah, because supporters would be like, oh, Trump did this new thing. But then if somebody reads that who supports the president, they're like, these dang people, these dang whoever writing about the president. So it's an interesting thing. So let's just say the president, to eliminate 1,200 CIA positions within larger plan to shrink spy workforce, according to a report. This comes to us again from The Independent. It is the concept that around 5% of the CIA's staff will be laid out as a part of a much larger set of cuts to the intelligence services sector within the U.S. And this is all coming down from the executive branch of the United States government. That is only interesting to me because, 5% of any workforce, it's meaningful to the human beings there. Is it truly meaningful to the overall operations of a large behemoth? Right?
I mean, it scales. Imagine if someone asked you to lose 5% of your blood.
Sure. I mean, but which wouldn't be that bad, would it? 5%? Yeah, we can handle 5%. Let's go. but 5% of your family, hey, we got to take 5% of your family away. And it probably represents one human being that would be like, oh, whoops, it would have to equate to at least one human being or half of someone in your family.
Yeah, neither of our analogies here are I guess they're not factoring in that the 5% is not look, the department itself, the CIA itself, the agency. Not everybody has the same job, right? So the argument for fans of, I guess, cost cutting, as this would be portrayed by supporters, they would say, look, we're cutting the fat. We're not getting rid of anything important, to your point, right? We're firing, or we're causing redundancies for like the 3 assistant accountants.
Yeah, we're right-sizing. That's what we're doing. We're right-sizing this puppy. Right. And just
truing up. We're truing up.
Yes.
There you go.
But it is an interesting place to make cuts. The CIA, is looked at in a lot of different ways, but by a lot of people in the national security realms see them as a much necessary thing, right? We need to know what others are doing outside the U.S. so we can know what to do from both a public policy, stance and, a diplomatic stance and a where do the tanks go sense. Seems pretty important. It's kind of weird. It's really weird when you take into account the last story I'm going to be talking about today, which is the concept of reopening Alcatraz prison. This just came forward. CBS News reported on it. A bunch of places reported on it. It seems as though it's a concept or an idea that kind of sprung forth, I don't know, guys, out of another thought or something. And then all of a sudden it is supposed to happen. The sitting United States president had the concept, hey, we should reopen Alcatraz. It is a symbol of law and order. We reopen this baby. We put our most ruthless and violent people back on Alcatraz, and the world will see that we mean business when it comes to justice and law and order and all of that stuff. The only thing is, and we have to think about this, it costs around 3 times the amount of money to run Alcatraz as a prison as it does any other. What do we call those prisons, guys? The ones that are extremely tough to get in and out of.
Supermax.
Yeah. Like a Supermax.
Well, that is Alcatraz.
Well, it is. It is.
The Rock, yes, of course.
But
it's also just like run like a museum right now. It's a historical site where people can take tours. To do what he's asking is a tall order, just for a lot of folks. And can't just be snapped into existence.
It has been for a long time. It was a disciplinary barracks for the U.S. military for a long time. Then it became a prison only until 1963. Then it was not a prison after that, and it hasn't been since then. We talked about it during the time when it was occupied by, what was the name of that group? The Red Power Movement?
AIM. It was a coalition from AIM.
Native People Movement.
Yeah.
Yes. American Indian Movement.
Correct. But that was literally a couple of years. Then after that, it's just been a place where people go and revel in the concept that was Alcatraz. And how crazy was this? How weird is it that this was a prison for a long time?
You can take a pleasure cruise just past it, too, in the San Francisco harbor. Like, it's a really cool thing to see lurking off in the distance amidst the fog and all of that stuff.
It's a big piece of history and culture as well. And if you want to read the statement in full, you can find excerpts of it in various media platforms of choice. You can also, if you are so inclined, just go to Truth Social and read his statement in full about it. Critics are saying that critics are accusing the president of having watched a film and saying that that is what informed his new decision, which seems to the public to have come out of the blue, relatively speaking.
I've certainly never been accused of watching a film, so my heart goes out to the man. No, joking.
Well, but again, in my mind, all that matters is that it costs 3 times what it costs to run any other prison, because it's a dang island, because you got to ship everything out there. It doesn't have working water. It doesn't have working sewer as it stands right now. Good luck to anybody who wants to rebuild that thing. If you are going to put that kind of expense from a federal budget into, doing that kind of thing, what does it say to all of those spies, CIA personnel that you're just firing? And how does that make them feel? And we know that China, Russia, and several other countries that oppose the United States are looking for disaffected, specifically spies, to work with. So seems like a crazy...
Be plenty. Good pipeline for that soon.
Seems like a dumb move to me. All right, that's all for this segment. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
And we have returned. We're going to move quickly through some things at the last part of our weekly Strange News segment here. First, to get in front of the communiques and the emails. Folks, there's often a misconception about the CIA. When we said not everybody does the same job in this gargantuan agency, and it is pretty big, we have to remember that the CIA provides a lot of analyst work that is mission critical to many other agencies, and not spoopy-doop agencies, not tradecraft folks, but, there's somebody's job to keep track of up-and-coming politicians in the Philippines or in Nepal, build a biography and a dossier on them. The CIA World Factbook is not perfect, and it has an angle, but it's one of the best go-to places for international information, right? You want to learn more about a country, start there. And with that, the argument is that cutting the CIA would essentially be cutting one's nose despite one's face. You know what I mean? With knock-on consequences. So there are a lot of questions about money. We'd love to hear your thoughts in this regard. There's something I think would serve as a follow-up to some episodes we've done in the past. Guys, not too long ago, a former Bush official went public and claimed that the U.S. has built a $21 trillion underground network only for the wealthy to hide out during a near extinction event. Have you guys heard about this?
Sounds like fun. Do you think they have ping pong?
I hope so. I mean, for $21 trillion, they better have good ping pong.
They might have
Who
pickleball.
said it? Who said this?
This is Catherine Austin Fitts, who worked under the first Bush administration. You can find I think a good reputable article on this comes from The Independent on May 5th. Now, I was a little bit weirded out at first because this statement was on the Tucker Carlson show, which I know is not everybody's slice of quesadilla. But looking into this stuff, it does seem that Fitz knows what she's talking about. As the Assistant Sec of Housing and Urban Development under H.W. Bush, she was following money, right? And it seems that with a little bit of forensic accounting, if you go to a 2017 report by an economist at Michigan State University, Mark Skidmore, you'll see that unauthorized spending to the tune of 21 trillion, largely untraceable dollars, occurred between 1998 and 2015, which means adjusting for radical inflation, that's more than 21 trillion now.
It's mad money. It's imaginary. How do you even quantify? I mean, I guess that's literally what you're doing, but an amount like that, I cannot wrap my head around it.
Yeah. And Fitz claims, quote, "We have built an extraordinary number of underground bases and supposedly transportation systems," end quote, including, she claims, bases beneath the ocean. So real like Sequest stuff, if anybody remembers the show Sequest.
China is currently building a giant undersea thing. I can't find the thing. We were going to talk about it. It was from February.
Right.
A 6,000 foot below the surface deep sea space station.
Didn't we do an episode on undersea bunkers and facilities? Or maybe it was Arctic, like beneath the ice. It's just ringing a bell, this kind of stuff. You're
right. You're right. No, we've done some stuff on undersea structures, which are not as sci-fi as they may sound at first blush. We look to your point about Arctic structures, hidden Arctic structures on both sides of the poles.
Facilities, potentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we also know that I think this is an episode in the future because lest we be too dismissive of this story, it's important to remember that there have been proven cases of the government conspiring to build things like that, like the not Briarcliff. That's a street here with its own weird history. But who was it we talked to? We talked to the guy Garrett Graff, who wrote the book on, perhaps it was called Greenbrier, but for a long time, this thing that appeared to be just an okay run-of-the-mill hotel was actually one of those hardened sites for high-level government officials and their families to survive a nuclear event. So it's not evil that these things are being built, and there's a real philosophical dilemma about, the public as taxpayers, what they do or do not deserve to be aware of, right? With how their money is spent. But then also, if the government goes public and says, yes, thank you for your tax money, we're building these here, 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 and here. This is the latitude and longitude. By the way, this is where the power and the water comes from. Let's hope none of our enemies know how to use Wikipedia. You know what I mean?
Right.
Dude. Well, okay.
Again, long lines building, by the way. It just keeps, I don't know, that is my quintessential, rich people bunker, or high-level government officials bunker.
When was George H.W. Bush in office?
89 to 93.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was the 41st.
And before that, he was CIA.
That's right. So always forget.
So, theoretically, guys, over 30 years of secret bunkers could have been hanging out doing things, or like as they're building them over all of those years, right? All the way up to 2015 that we talked about in that report. I'm thinking if they did ever create some kind of underwater secret places, it might account for the weird stuff coming out of the water that the Navy keeps shooting video of. Right?
The UFOs,
I don't think I know what you're talking about, Matt.
Unidentified submerged objects or transmedium objects.
Of course. Things that go from flight to under the water in like a very alarmingly fast
or just staying under the water, such that people have all kinds of all kinds of instrumentation, and the smartest people with the most sophisticated toys are saying, "What is this?"
Well, yeah, and if that kind of tech and ability to build under the water like that has been around since then, you can only imagine what literally off the books R&D is going on.
You're totally right.
Yeah, and speaking of off the books and R&D, to get back to this, because I do think again it's good inspiration for an episode. The report that Skidmore looks at, he's not, he is not by any measure or means a wingnut. He is an economist. He's doing forensic accounting, and his report, which again looks through a lot of stuff, he finds that the Army had 6.5 trillion just in 2015 of something called, quote, unsupported adjustments, which means money was spent and it went somewhere. And it was not
creative accounting.
It was not supported means it was not like allocated to specific program.
That sounds like cooking the books to me.
It sure does. Given the this is another quote from the report. Given the Army's $122 billion budget, this means unsupported adjustments were 54 times spending authorized by Congress.
That's insane.
Which is insane. Yes, I think that is the appropriate word here. So if you've been to one of these underground or undersea bases, we want to hear from you. And yes, the cool cheese cave in Missouri counts, right? If you work in Denver Airport.
Cheese Palace.
Right. Yeah, we'd love to hear that. We're not going to get to everything today, but we are going to give a few more teasers here. We can't leave you without a dope beat to step two, especially folks who are also super into astronomy. It turns out, caveat asterisk maybe, that astronomers may have spotted a possible Planet 9, and they've done this using data that spans more than 2 decades.
What is
Planet X, Nibiru?
This is like it meant to be an inhabitable planet potentially, or just like a new planet?
No, just like a what the hell kind of elliptical orbit is this thing on? Right?
Well, yeah, a planet that is tied to ancient stuff like Mayan calendar stuff.
That's been
2012
astronomy. Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay. Oh.
Yeah, if we go to TechSpot with the journalist Sky Jacobs from just a few days ago, May 5th, 2025. Again, we're recording on the 7th. What we see is that there's a newly identified object that has been spotted in 2 infrared sky surveys that may be the most significant evidence ever for the elusive thing referred to as Planet 9. This would be a heavenly object about the size of Neptune, orbiting hundreds of times farther from the sun than from Earth. So
how do you explain it being recorded that far back? Like, is it a difference in the way bodies are viewed, or like a change over time? Like, how would they have been able to see that? Or are you saying that the prediction of it was almost mystical?
We're tying it, perhaps a bit tongue in cheek, to ancient belief systems and thoughts. I mean, it is technically possible that there could be some massive elliptical orbit,
right? That's what I was
that over time brings this body, if it exists, closer to planet Earth and what humans could observe in the sky at that time.
Thank you.
But it's also possible that it's not an elliptical orbit, or not, radically elliptical. So it's just out there in a long circle.
Yeah,
and we We only know about it because every so often we get a little on the infrared.
Well, guys, I can't remember fully. I remember Stitchin. I can't remember. Zechariah Stitchin.
Yeah.
He's the guy that wrote the stuff that we talked about in our video series a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
He, in like the, I want to say 70s or 80s, came forward and said, hey, there's this other thing that these ancient peoples wrote about. It was his translation, though, right, of the ancient writings that basically said, hey, this thing called Nibiru is out there.
Mm-hmm.
And it spells doom for Earth.
Right.
Why does it spell doom? Because it's heading towards us or something? Like
the idea that Stitchin has is that, when this thing returns, when it gets close enough, something about its spiritual importance or something secular, like just its mass, will create an extinction event.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of like how theoretically the right kind of fart from the sun, a coronal mass ejection, could send humanity back to the Dark Ages.
Is it because of the trajectory of that ellipse that, like, at the end of it, when we catch it, it's almost like an exponential curve that would, like, launch it or something? I'm sorry, I'm like...
That's interesting. Yeah, because that's similar to, like, how comets have predictable patterns.
That's what I'm wondering. It's just, my mind is running wild with this one.
This is great.
Fascinating and terrifying.
I love this stuff. And here's what we'll end with. This is when we say 23 years of data, what we're really looking at are two phenomenal or mission critical gatherings that are separated by 23 years each. So there are two observations that are for sure something out there in the ink. And the fact that they happen from two different things, from NASA's IRIS infrared astronomical satellite launching in 1983, and Japan's Akari satellite, which was active from like 2006 to 2011, the fact that they found this kind of stuff, that they went back and looked for the data from the NASA satellite, this is what makes things really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How strange, how fascinating would it be if, and astronomers, I'm sure, hate to hear us say this stuff, just hypothetically, folks, how fascinating would it be if some of those ancient predictions about this mysterious other planet did have some sand to them? I think
it's amazing.
I think it would be so. It's what we need right now as a civilization. We also need to talk about the 250 federal investigations tied to the online network 764. Do not read that unless you have a strong stomach. That may be something.
Was that the unaliving video coercion kind of ring with the satanic, right?
Yeah. Using blackmail, sexual violent behavior, self-harm.
One of the most heinous. I remember when we talked about that originally.
And we don't have time to get into it now, but perhaps that'll be a strange news program in the future, maybe next week. We also want to shout out Credit Suisse for, again, getting fined in helping wealthy Americans hide over $4 billion US.
Credit Suisse?
Yeah. Okay. They got fined, though, so it's okay.
All right.
They did get fined less than $4 billion, but they did get fined.
And they're still Swiss.
And they're still Swiss, to their credit. We are going to call it an evening tonight. We're off to Noctivigate. Thank you, as always, so much for tuning in, friends and neighbors, fellow conspiracy realists. We want to hear from you. You can find us online. You can give us a call on the phone. You can hit us at our good old-fashioned email address.
You can also find us all over the social medias of your choosing at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on X, FKA, Twitter, on YouTube with video content for your perusing enjoyment, and on Facebook, where we have our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy. On Instagram and TikTok, we're Conspiracy Stuff Show.
We have a phone number. It is 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know within the voicemail message if we can use your name and message on the air. If you'd like to not use your voice to talk to us, why not use your fingies? Send us a good old-fashioned email. We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. Join us here in the dark. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.